We're here with Tim Hanlon with Denuo Ventures. He's going to give us a perspective on what the advertisers think of the business. This was at the Cable Next conference. So one of the comments you made is that the advertisers have spent $120 million on network programming on the web, like abc.com, that sort of thing.
Yeah, I think those are, they're kind of preliminary numbers, but the reality is that broadband video is starting to come into its own as a viable advertising environment. I think there's an amazing amount of content that's coming over the broadband pipe, so to speak, that it's taken a couple of years to get sort of right in terms of the right playing environments, the right way to serve advertising. But it's ironic because we've been talking about these things in the realm of VOD and cable. Cable provided VOD for many years. I mean, since the beginning of the decade at least. And broadband video, literally only in the last 2 years, has sort of seemingly come out of nowhere to actually do a bunch of the things that we were talking about were possible in cable VOD. So the reality is what that means is that it's not about television anymore. It's about video across multiple touch points. And programmers are clearly cognizant of that. They're working very hard to not only be just deliverers of linear television programming, but non-linear on-demand or DVR or all these other kinds of environments of peer-to-peer, file shared, all that kind of stuff. And it stands to reason that advertising is going to be looked upon as being the revenue generator for that evolution, right? So the reality is you can argue about, a couple million here, a couple million there, going from one platform to another. At the end of the day, a programmer is really providing programming across multiple touch points. The advertising, frankly, just needs to go along with that. The form factor may change, the audience numbers may change, the sophistication of the technology about each of those forms may change, but the reality is that advertising and content are natural partners of each other, and it's almost irrelevant at the end touch point, right? If a consumer wants to access, an Ugly Betty show on 3 days after it ran via abc.com, who is the programmer and or the advertiser to stand in their way? And that's what we're getting to. And to me, this is all obvious stuff that's been, finally starting to hit the ground. Now, if you're a TV seller and you see the broadband group getting the money, well, maybe there's an internal battle you got to worry about. But from the big picture perspective, the advertiser just wants to be where the audience is. And some of the audience is not watching linear television.
Well, one of the things you commented on was the whole idea of making it easy for the advertisers to kind of get on the platform, and you even talked maybe about the whole idea of cross-platform, this all MPVD, I think, solution that Brenner mentioned the other day, whether it's satellite, whether it's telco, whether it's cable. Can you talk about that a little bit?
Yeah, I mean, I'm obviously biased because my world is of advertising, right, and agencies, and I guess it's interesting, we've heard from the cable business for many years that they're the ones that can do addressably served advertising, highly targeted advertising, and these cool ad insertion types of things. The reality, though, is on the best day, cable is only, 65 or so % of multi-channel homes in the United States. There is a 35% plus grouping out there that gets their television from alternate sources, right? DBS and telco and broadband providers, DSL, broadband over power lines. It could be from water for all I know someday, right? We have to be very cognizant that people are going to be able to watch content and video from multiple paths. And if I'm an advertiser, I have to be almost neutral to the distribution path, but pure to the content delivery, right? So if I'm a consumer and I choose to watch your programming via satellite, if I choose to watch it via cable, I choose to watch it via broadband, I need to be in all of those places. So from an advertising perspective, I need to be holistic in my approach. I can't just sort of worry about cable's version of doing it and the DBS version of doing it, the telco version. I'm going to expect the programmers to kind of deal with all those things distribution-wise. I just need one phone call that allows me to buy one ad on a national programmer and allow the operators to do all their individual nuances accordingly. And ESPN or whomever can roll all that up and make that a viable, sellable proposition to me as an advertiser. Now, so what Dan Brenner said about sort of, maybe a much broader approach, but from an advertiser's perspective and a national advertising perspective, I couldn't be more enthusiastic about a non-denominational approach to distribution. And what that does is that's recognizing that cable is part of a bigger ecosystem. And I think that's the rub, right? I think cable has, for a long time, thought that they were the only game in town. Whether rightly or wrongly, we know that's not the case. Right? And I think it's been difficult to sort of get some of these nuances of new forms of advertising across to the cable community because they think that they're the only game in town. I got news for you. Come 2009, we have a new wrinkle, and that's called digital terrestrial, right? So the phenomenon is only going to be exacerbated by yet more ways of getting stuff. To me, distribution is becoming cheap, right? If I'm a programmer, if I'm an advertiser, I need to be cognizant of those multiple touch points and
Right.
be in all of them as the consumer chooses.
So in one sense, you want these kind of national platforms, but at the same time, you probably want more targeted and be able to put ads where you want them and to the audience you want.
And so I would say that a lot of the original targeted opportunities have been held hostage to local ad sales. Mm-hmm. And again, this is where the cable industry has this is their starting point, and it's been kind of, all the great opportunities have been held back by buy more local and we'll facilitate with all these new technologies. The reality is most national advertisers don't buy a whole lot of local. They buy national. So what would be more compelling for us would be to be able to buy through an A&E or a Weather Channel or an ESPN and have the operators, plural, use their individual technologies to addressably serve audiences. I'd like to be able to look at a national audience delivered, say, through ESPN's content,
Okay.
and be able to multiply serve ads across multiple audiences simultaneously. That's only achievable if ESPN and the various distribution partners are partnered together and working in concert with each other in a facilitative kind of manner.
Okay.
And that, again, as I said on my panel earlier, I worry not about the technology being able to do all that stuff. I worry about the politics in the middle preventing it from happening.
And that mindset, you said, having a mindset.
Mindset matters a lot.
Well, Tim, thank you very much for
Pleasure.
your time. And
Thank you.